The knock hit his door like it wanted to break it down. Hard, fast, angry. Ethan Cole shot up in bed, breath stuck in his throat, listening to the dark. His clock glowed 5 a.m. The apartment was cold. The rain tapped the window like tiny fingers. Another set of knocks rattled the frame, and his heart started running before his mind did. Who comes at this hour? And why his door? He swung his feet onto the icy floor and moved without thinking, phone in his hand like it could save him. And he reached the lock, leaned to the peephole, and saw only a blurred shape under the half-dead hallway light. Then a voice slid through the crack in the door, thin and shaking. "Ethan, it's Paige." His chest tightened. Paige Hart, his CEO. He unlocked the door so fast his hand slipped. She stood there like a stranger wearing Paige Hart's face. Her blonde hair was half loose from a rushed tie. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in dark lines. Her eyes were red, swollen, yet empty in a way he had never seen on anyone who ran a company. "Paige," he said, forgetting the Ms. Hart he always used at work. "What happened? Are you—" Her gaze moved past him into his small apartment, as if she needed proof he was real. The thrift store couch, the worn rug, a stack of books on the coffee table, a basket of clean laundry he still hadn't folded. Her voice came out so soft, he almost missed it. "Can I come in?" Every warning in his body lit up. She was his boss, and the most watched woman in the building. Letting her into his apartment at 5 a.m. felt like stepping onto thin ice. But she looked like she might fall apart if he said no. He stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Yeah, come in." She walked past him, heels clicking like they belonged to another life. He caught a mix of expensive perfume and something sharp. Wine, maybe. Her steps were small, careful. Not the stride she carried into meetings. Yeah, she stopped in the middle of his living room and stood there like she didn't know what to do with her arms. "I'm sorry," she said, turning toward the door like she meant to leave. "I shouldn't be here. I don't know what I was thinking." Without planning it, Ethan moved and blocked her path, gentle but firm. "Paige, wait. You came here for a reason. Just talk to me." Her eyes lifted to his face. There was a fight in them. Pride pulling one way, need pulling the other. And then her shoulders sank, and a long breath slid out of her like a surrender. "I had a date tonight," she said. A laugh came out, but it had no joy. "God, that sounds pathetic." "It doesn't," Ethan said. He pointed to the couch. "Sit, please. I'll make coffee." To his surprise, she listened. Paige Hart, who could silence a room with one glance, perched on the edge of his old couch like she was afraid it might collapse under her, her hands twisted together in her lap. And Ethan went to the kitchen and started the coffee maker. The old machine rattled and wheezed. The sound felt safe, like a familiar friend. He had bought it right after his breakup 3 years ago when he was building a quiet life from the pieces. "How do you take it?" he called. "Black. 1 sugar," she answered. He poured 2 mugs and brought them back, sitting across from her in the armchair. Not too close, not too far. She wrapped both hands around the mug like she was cold, and even though the room wasn't. She took a sip, closed her eyes for a moment, and her face softened, just a little. "This is good," she whispered. "It's grocery store coffee," Ethan said. She opened her eyes and really looked at him, like she was trying to find the reason he didn't feel like everyone else. Then she said, "His name was Grant." Ethan stayed quiet. "Grant Holloway," she went on. "Money, connections, a downtown office with glass walls. The kind of man who thinks he invented success." Her mouth tightened. "We met at an event, right after my divorce was finalized." The word divorce sat in the air like smoke. We went to this steakhouse, Paige said. White tablecloths, fancy menus. You could smell how expensive it was. Her fingers gripped the mug harder. He talked for 2 hours about himself, every time I tried to say anything, and he smiled like he was listening, and then kept going like I didn't speak. Ethan could see it in his mind. A man in a perfect suit, proud of his own voice. Paige's voice dropped. During dessert, he leaned in and told me he respected ambitious women, said it was attractive. She swallowed. Then he said men still need to feel important. He said maybe if we were together, he could handle the big decisions, and I could focus on the smaller things so I wouldn't stress myself over important matters. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. Paige stared at the coffee like it had answers. I didn't throw my drink in his face when she said, I wanted to, but I didn't. I put down my fork, told him the evening was over, paid for my meal, and walked out like the calm, professional CEO everyone expects. Good, Ethan said. And he meant it. You did good. Her laugh broke in the middle, and her eyes filled again. And I sat in my car for almost an hour after that. She blinked fast, but tears still slipped. He's the third man in 2 weeks who made me feel like I'm too much, too successful, too opinionated, too independent. She lifted her eyes to Ethan, and the fear in them was the kind that didn't belong in boardrooms. My ex-husband said the same thing, she whispered, that I cared more about the company than the marriage, that I was married to my work, not him. Her voice cracked. And maybe he was right. Maybe I built this career and lost everything that matters. That's not true, Ethan said before he could stop himself. His voice came out stronger than he expected. Paige's head snapped up. How would you know? The edge in her voice flared, then faded. She looked away, ashamed. Sorry, I shouldn't. It's okay, Ethan said softly. You're hurt. He leaned forward a little. For what it's worth. When people say you're too much, what they're really saying is that you're more than they can hold. Paige stared at him, stunned. Something in her face loosened. Not all the way, just enough to breathe. How do you do that? She asked quietly. Do what? Say the right thing. She studied him. You've been doing it since I got here. Ethan shrugged, but he felt heat rise in his throat. I don't know, I just try to treat people like people. Not job titles. Paige looked down at her hands. Her fingers trembled around the mug. That's why I came here, she said. Or one of the reasons. Ethan's stomach flipped. What do you mean? She set the mug down like it suddenly weighed too much. Then she stood. Ethan stood too, his body reacting before his mind caught up. They were only a few feet apart. The small room suddenly too small. I went home after that date, Paige said. To my penthouse. Perfect furniture, perfect view, everything polished and cold. Her voice shook, and I stood in the dark and realized I couldn't remember the last time I felt happy. Not proud, not successful. Happy. She looked at him, and for the first time, Ethan saw real fear in her eyes. So I thought about work, she said. About the people in that building. Her throat worked like she had to force the next words out. And I realized you're the only person there who treats me like I'm human. Ethan's breath caught. You hold the elevator, she said. You say good morning like you mean it. You asked if I was okay one night when I was working late. Nobody else did. He remembered. The glass office. The tired look she tried to hide. Paige swallowed. I looked up your address, she admitted. In the employee system. Her face tightened with shame. I know it's wrong, but I needed to see something real. A life that makes sense. A person who feels steady. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You're the only person I wanted to talk to. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. The rain outside sounded louder, like the world was leaning in. Paige stepped closer, slow enough to give him time to move away. He didn't. Her hand lifted and rested on his chest, right over his heartbeat. The warmth of her palm burned through his thin shirt. She felt the frantic thump under her fingers. "I can feel it," she whispered. Ethan swallowed hard. "Paige." Her eyes searched his. So maybe I'm not the only one feeling something." He could have lied. He could have stepped back and saved his job, his quiet routine, the safe life he built after his own heartbreak. But her hand was on his chest, and the truth was already there between them. "I feel it too," Ethan said, voice tight. "But I'm scared." Paige's face fell, and she nodded like she understood too well. "Because I'm your CEO," Ethan said. "If this goes wrong, I don't just lose you, I lose my job, my stability. Everything I rebuilt after my ex left." Paige's eyes glistened. "So what do we do?" she asked, barely a breath. "Because I can't act like this isn't real." Ethan took a slow breath, steadying himself. "We're careful," he said. "We don't decide everything at 5 a.m. when you're hurting and I'm half asleep." He looked at her hand on his chest, then back at her eyes. "We take time, we think. We don't rush." A tear slid down Paige's cheek. I came here hoping you'd tell me I was crazy," she whispered. "That would have been easier." "I know," Ethan said softly. "But I've never been good at easy." They stood there in his tiny living room as the sky outside turned from black to gray. Her hand stayed on his chest. His heart kept racing under her palm. And Ethan knew with sharp, sudden clarity that nothing in his life would stay simple after this morning. Monday morning felt wrong the second Ethan opened his eyes. The rain outside his window was the same as always. The gray light was the same. The city hum was the same. But inside him, everything was loud. His apartment still held a faint trace of Paige's perfume, like the air itself was refusing to forget. He made coffee and drank half of it without tasting it. Paige's empty mug sat on the table like proof that he hadn't imagined any of it. At work, he arrived early, like he always did. A badge swipe, lobby lights, elevator ride with co-workers talking about sports and weekend plans. Ethan nodded at the right moments, but his mind kept jumping back to 5 a.m. and a hand on his chest. Spreadsheets were supposed to help. Numbers followed rules. You could sort them, filter them, make sense of them. Feelings didn't behave like that. At 10:15, his calendar chimed. All hands meeting, 10:30 a.m. mandatory. His stomach tightened. Big meetings like that meant big news. New structure. A major launch. Layoffs. A sale. The conference room was packed by the time he walked in. People held coffee cups and water bottles like shields. Voices stayed low, nervous. Ethan slid into a spot near the back wall where he could see everyone and no one saw him. At exactly 10:30, the door opened. Paige Hart walked in, and for a moment Ethan forgot how to breathe. She looked like the Paige he had always known at the office. Hair smooth and pinned back, makeup perfect, and a navy suit that fit her like armor. Her heels clicked with steady confidence as she crossed the room. If Ethan hadn't seen her on his couch, he would have believed she was fine. But he had seen the other version, and now he saw the cracks nobody else could. A faint shadow under her eyes, a tight grip on the podium for half a second before she let go, a controlled inhale like she was building a wall inside her chest. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was clear, strong, the CEO voice. "I'll keep this brief." The room went still. "We've been approached by Westbridge Capital with an acquisition offer." The word landed like a rock dropped into water. Acquisition. People shifted. Someone whispered a curse. Someone else muttered, "No way." Paige lifted one hand. Before anyone panics, take a breath. No decisions have been made yet. She laid it out calmly. Westbridge was a large investment group. They wanted to buy the company and keep the brand. And more resources. Bigger reach. New systems. Possible leadership changes. But I'm pushing hard for protections, she said, meeting the room with steady eyes. Your jobs are not about to disappear. Hands went up. Questions came fast. Paige answered each one in a controlled, confident way. It was like watching a woman walk a tightrope without looking down. Every now and then, her eyes swept the room and landed on Ethan, only for a second. But Ethan felt it every time, like a warm hand pressing against his ribs. He looked away quickly. He didn't trust his face. When the meeting ended, the room exploded into noise. People stood at once. Some looked angry, some looked scared, some looked excited, like they could smell bigger paychecks coming. Ethan tried to slip out with the crowd. Nathan Pierce. No, different name now. He had to remember who he was in this rewritten life. Ethan Cole. Paige's voice cut through the room like a bell. Ethan froze. Paige stood at the front, gathering her notes, expression calm in public, eyes sharp. Could you stay for a few minutes? She asked. I have a question about the quarterly projections. The words sounded normal, professional, but Ethan knew they weren't about numbers. Sure, he said, and his voice sounded too quiet. People filed out. The door finally closed with a soft click. The room felt too big now, too quiet, like the air itself was listening. Paige set her papers down and looked at Ethan for a long moment. They stood on opposite sides of an invisible line. How are you? She asked. Her voice was softer now. The CEO mask still sat on her face, but it wasn't sealed tight. I should ask you that, Ethan said. He took a few steps closer, careful. That was big. I'm busy, she said, and then she swallowed. But that's not why I asked you to stay. Her eyes held his. I meant what I said, she whispered. At your apartment. Ethan's heart started pounding again, loud enough he worried she could hear it. I know this is messy, Paige continued. Complicated. I know I'm your boss. I know there's an acquisition offer on the table, and the timing is terrible. She took a breath, and for the first time her voice shook. But pretending nothing happened, I can't do it. Ethan's mouth felt dry. What do you want me to say? I want the truth, Paige said quietly. I need to know if I'm alone in this. She stepped closer, just a little. Not threatening, just honest. Did you feel something that night, she asked? Or was it just me being a wreck and grabbing onto the first safe place I could find? Ethan could have lied. He could have given her the answer that protected them both. He could have said, and it was a strange morning. You were upset. It meant nothing. He could have saved his job, saved his routine, saved his quiet life. But when he looked at her, he saw the woman on his couch with her hands wrapped around a cheap coffee mug. He saw the way her shoulders had curled inward like she was trying to hold herself together. He heard her voice again. You're the only person who treats me like I'm human. You're not alone, Ethan said. His voice was low, steady, honest. I felt it too. Paige's shoulders dropped like she had been carrying a heavy box and finally set it down. Her eyes shined, but she didn't let the tears fall. Then why are we standing this far apart? She asked softly. Ethan let out a slow breath. Because I'm terrified. Paige blinked once, waiting. Ethan's hands flexed at his sides. You're the CEO. I'm a data analyst with rent due every month. If this goes wrong, it doesn't just hurt feelings. It destroys careers. It becomes a story people tell in the halls. Paige nodded. I know. And you just announced a possible acquisition, Ethan added. Your whole world is shifting. Mine is too, and I didn't even ask for it. Paige's jaw tightened, like she was holding back frustration. But then it softened. So we build a bridge, she said. The words came out simple, like she was used to solving hard problems. Ethan almost laughed. You make it sound easy. It's not easy, she said. Oh, it's just possible. Ethan swallowed. My ex left me because I chose quiet over constant ambition. She said I was comfortable being average. I'm still scared of hearing that again. Paige's eyes softened. I'm not your ex, she said. And quiet doesn't mean average. It can mean steady. It can mean safe. Safe. The word hit Ethan in a place he didn't talk about. He took another step closer, stopping with space still between them. Even if you mean it, Ethan said. And there's still the power thing. If you want something, can I really say no? If I want something, can you really hear it without it turning into control? Paige's throat moved. She nodded slowly. I've thought about that, she said. More than you know. Silence stretched. Around them, company posters talked about growth and innovation. The projector screen still showed the company logo glowing bright behind Paige like a spotlight. I won't push you, Paige said. But I need to ask you something. Ethan waited. Can you live with pretending none of that happened? She asked quietly. Can you look at me in the hallway and act like I'm only your CEO? The answer rose in him like a tide. No, he said. It came out too fast to be a performance. I can't, he added, voice lower. I tried to tell myself I could, but then I'd be lying. Paige closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them again, they were clear, focused, determined. Then we have two choices, she said. We bury it and go back to normal, or we find a way forward that doesn't break us. And if there is no way, Ethan asked. Then at least we were honest, Paige said. At least we tried. I can live with heartbreak. I can't live with what if. Those words sat heavy in Ethan's chest. He thought about his apartment, his routines, and his quiet little life that had been safe for so long. He also thought about Paige at his door, broken and brave enough to knock. I need time, Ethan said finally. Not in this room, not right now. Paige nodded once. Take it, she said. I mean it. She gathered her notes and walked toward the door. Ethan's chest tightened as she passed him like the room was suddenly cold. Paige, he said. She stopped and looked back. For what it's worth, Ethan said. I wish I was braver. A small smile touched her mouth. It didn't reach her eyes, but it was real. I see more courage in you than you see in yourself, she said. You know what you value. You live like it matters. Then she stepped out, and the door clicked shut behind her. Ethan stood alone in the empty conference room, staring at the glowing logo on the screen. His heart was pounding, his head spinning, and the line between safe and brave felt thinner than it had ever been. And the day crawled. Ethan sat at his desk and tried to work, but the numbers blurred. Every notification made his pulse jump. Every footstep in the hallway made him glance up, but Paige didn't come. By the time he walked home that night under light rain, his shoes were wet and his thoughts were loud. He showered, ate leftovers, turned on a show and didn't absorb a single scene. He picked up his phone twice, thumb hovering over the screen, then remembered the truth. He didn't have her number. Around 9 p.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. His stomach flipped as he opened it. It was a message, short, direct, honest. Paige, I got your number from HR. I know that's probably wrong, but honesty is kind of our thing now. Can we talk? Not at the office. Somewhere neutral. Ethan stood in the middle of his small living room, rain tapping the window behind him. His thumb hovered over the keyboard like the choice weighed 100 pounds. He could say no. He could choose safety. And instead his fingers moved before fear could stop them. Ethan. When? The reply came fast. Page. Friday, 7. Brew Lane Coffee on Alder Street. Do you know it? Ethan stared at the screen. His heart pounded like it had at 5 a.m. He typed back, slow and steady. Ethan. I know it. I'll be there. A pause. Then one more message appeared. Page. Thank you, Ethan. Really. He lowered the phone and looked around his tiny apartment, at the couch she'd sat on, and the empty space where her presence still felt warm. Friday was 4 days away, and Ethan knew he wouldn't sleep the same until he saw her again. Friday came like a slow drumbeat. Ethan couldn't escape. All week, time stretched in strange ways. Meetings felt longer. Hallways felt louder. Every time Ethan heard Page's name, his chest tightened, even when people said it like it was only a title. At the office, they stayed careful. Page didn't stop at his desk. Ethan didn't look for excuses to be near her. In meetings, her voice stayed steady, sharp, professional. If their eyes met, it was brief, almost accidental, like two people brushing hands in a crowd and pretending it didn't happen. But inside Ethan, everything was counting down. On Friday evening, he left his apartment at 6:30. The rain had slowed to a thin mist, but the air still smelled wet, like the city had been washed and left dry. His hands wouldn't stop shaking, so he shoved them into his jacket pockets as he walked. Brew Lane Coffee glowed warm through its front windows. The light inside looked soft and safe, and like a place where hard truths could land without breaking everything. When Ethan pushed the door open, the bell gave a quiet ring. Paige was already there, of course. She sat in a back corner with her blazer draped over the chair, hair down around her shoulders. No suit armor tonight, just a simple blouse and tired eyes that still held something bright. 2 cups sat on the table. Ethan's heart kicked hard as he walked over. Paige looked up, and for a second, the CEO mask slipped, and Ethan saw nerves there, real nerves. Hope and fear sitting side by side. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," Ethan answered. His voice came out rougher than he meant. He slid into the chair across from her. Paige pushed one of the cups toward him. "Black. 1 sugar," she said. "I remembered." Ethan took a sip. It was perfect. Not fancy. Just right. For a moment they sat in silence while the coffee shop hummed around them. A couple laughed near the window. A barista wiped down the counter. And somewhere in the back, a grinder buzzed. Normal life moving like it had no idea what was sitting at their table. Paige was the one who spoke first. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began. "About being careful." Ethan's chest tightened. He braced for the words that would shut this down. "You were right. This is wrong. Let's forget it." Paige nodded once, like she agreed with that part too. "You were right," she said. "We do need to be careful." Ethan looked down at his cup, a jaw tight, trying to prepare himself to lose something he hadn't even fully held yet. Then Paige added, "But I've also been thinking about how I've lived my whole life." Ethan lifted his eyes. Paige's hands rested around her cup, steady now, but her voice carried a quiet edge. "I take risks in business all the time," she said. "I bet millions on plans, on people, on numbers. I'll walk into a room full of investors and fight for what I believe." She swallowed. But when it comes to my own heart, I hide. I pick work every time because it feels safer than being seen." Her eyes held Ethan's, like she was forcing herself not to look away. I'm tired of that, she said. I'm tired of going home to a beautiful place that feels empty. I'm tired of dates where men only see a job title. I'm tired of feeling like I have to be smaller so someone else can feel big. Ethan's throat tightened. I can't stop thinking about that morning, Paige continued. And not just because I was upset, but because you saw me, the real me. You didn't treat me like the CEO who broke down. You treated me like a person who was hurting. Ethan let out a slow breath. I can't stop thinking about it either, he admitted. I've tried. Every time I open a spreadsheet, my brain throws your face in front of me. A small smile touched Paige's mouth, shaky but real. So I need to know, Paige said, voice quiet. Is this something you actually want to explore? Or were you just being kind? Ethan stared at her for a long moment. I was being kind, he said. Paige's face flickered, like the air shifted. Then Ethan added, but not only kind. He set his cup down. His hands weren't steady. Paige, I like you, he said. Not the title, not the power, you. The woman who sat on my couch and told me she was lonely. The woman who walks through life carrying the whole world and still tries to hold the elevator for strangers. Paige blinked fast, her eyes shined. I like you too, she whispered. More than I planned to. More than I probably should. There it was. The truth spoken out loud like it couldn't be taken back now. Ethan swallowed. I'm still scared. Paige nodded. Me too. I'm scared of losing my job, Ethan said. Yeah, I'm scared of people finding out and turning it into gossip. I'm scared of being not enough. Paige's shoulders sank. And I'm scared of hurting you, she said. Scared of the power imbalance. Scared I'll be selfish without meaning to be. She stared at the table for a second, then lifted her eyes again. But I'm more scared, she said, of walking away and wondering for the rest of my life what could have happened if we tried. The words settled between them like warm weight, and Paige took a slow breath. So what does trying look like? Ethan thought for a long moment, letting his fear speak, then letting his steady side answer. We start with this, he said. Talking in a coffee shop like normal people. Not secretive, not reckless. Outside of work, we take it slow and honest. Paige nodded. Inside the office, Ethan continued, we stay professional. No flirting, no sneaking around. If it ever feels wrong, we stop and we talk. Paige's shoulders loosened. Slow and honest, she said. I can do that. And one more thing, Ethan added. His voice dropped. No big physical moves until we both feel ready. No heat-of-the-moment choices that leave us ashamed. Paige's cheeks flushed, but she nodded without hesitation. Agreed. Ethan's breath came out shaky. So, we're doing this? Paige's smile grew, small but bright. I think we are. They both laughed, soft and surprised, like neither of them expected a moment this tender to exist for them. And they stayed there for over an hour. They talked about small things first. Coffee, favorite takeout, the best place to watch the water when the wind wasn't too sharp. Then the bigger things slipped in like truth always does. Paige told him she grew up in a small coastal town, raised by a mother who worked herself tired. She talked about how she pushed and pushed because she was terrified of having nothing. Ethan told her about his own past, a father who worked with his hands, and a mother who made a home feel safe even when money was tight. He told her about his ex, the woman who called him average when he chose stability over constant chasing. Paige shook her head slowly. Quiet isn't failure, she said. It's a choice. When they finally left Brew Lane, the street lights smeared across wet pavement. The air was cold enough to sting. Paige walked him to the corner. "Thank you," she said, "for showing up, for listening." "I don't feel brave," Ethan admitted. "Yeah, you showed up," Paige said. "That counts." They didn't hug. They didn't kiss. They stood there for one extra second, both wanting more and choosing not to rush it. Over the next weeks, a new rhythm grew. At work, nothing changed on the surface. Ethan ran reports, sent emails, joined meetings. Paige led like she always had, sharp and steady. To anyone watching, they were only CEO and employee. But outside work, everything was changing. Coffee on Saturday mornings, quiet walks along the waterfront where the mist made the city feel softer. A movie at a small theater where nobody looked twice at them. Dinner at places that didn't need reservations. They talked more than anything. They talked about fears, habits, the way Paige's mind never stopped working, the way Ethan's quiet could sometimes hide his hurt. Yet they built a foundation out of honesty, one careful brick at a time. At the same time, the acquisition talk grew hotter. Some days, Paige looked drained, pulled thin by lawyers and board meetings. She would step out of conference rooms with her jaw tight and her eyes tired, like she was carrying something heavy and refusing to drop it. One evening, she came to Ethan's apartment again. Not at 5 a.m. this time. It was 8 p.m. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was clean, but her energy was worn down to the bone. "Long day?" Ethan asked as he let her in. "Board meeting ran 3 hours over," Paige said. "Westbridge raised their offer. They want a decision soon." Ethan poured her water. They sat on the couch, closer than before, still careful, but not distant. "What do you want?" Ethan asked. Paige's eyes flicked to him. "For the company, or for me?" "Both," Ethan said. Paige stared at her hands for a moment. "For the company, yeah, the deal could be good," she said. "More money, more stability." Then she lifted her eyes. "For me," she said quietly, "it feels like a door opening." "A door to what?" Ethan asked. "To stepping away," Paige admitted. "To a life that doesn't eat me alive. To being a person again." Ethan's chest tightened. "You'd give up being CEO?" Paige shook her head fast. "Not for you," she said firmly. "I need you to hear that. I would never put that on you." Ethan held her gaze. "Well, I would step down for me," Paige continued. "For the woman who stood in your living room at 5 a.m. and realized she was alone in a beautiful prison." Her voice softened. "But you are part of why I believe a different life is possible." The word we had been circling came back, steady and warm. "When would you decide?" Ethan asked. "The vote is in a few weeks," Paige said. "If the board accepts, I'll have to choose whether I stay on under new owners or I walk away." "What are you leaning toward?" Ethan asked. Paige's mouth pressed into a thin line. She gave a tired half smile. "Ask me after the vote," she said. "Because if I tell you now, you might talk me out of it." Ethan didn't sleep much after she left. He lay in the dark, listening to rain, and realizing the truth was bigger than a secret feeling between them. This was about choices, about risk, and about a life that might not fit into the shape he had built. Then the day came. A company-wide message popped up at 4:12 p.m. All hands meeting, 4:30 p.m. mandatory. Ethan's stomach twisted. The conference room was packed. People lined the walls. The air felt heavy, like the whole company was holding its breath. At exactly 4:30, Paige walked in. She looked tired. Not messy, not broken. Just tired in a deep, honest way. She stepped to the front and rested her hands on the podium. "I thank you for coming," she said. "I wanted you to hear this from me." The room went silent. "Earlier today," Paige said, "the board voted to accept Westbridge Capital's acquisition offer." A wave of sound moved through the room. Whispers, sharp breaths, a few soft curses. Paige waited until it settled. This deal did not come lightly, she continued. Your positions are secure. Benefits will remain the same or improve. No one is losing their job because of this. The tension dipped just a little. There will be changes, Paige said. New systems, new reporting, new leadership at the top. She took a breath. Her fingers pressed harder to the podium. And I will not be part of that new leadership. The room froze. After the transition period, Paige said, I will be stepping down as CEO. You could feel the shock spread like cold water. Someone near the front called out, What will you do? Paige's mouth lifted in a small, real smile. Sleep, she said. A nervous laugh rippled through the room and some of the pressure cracked. Then Paige explained. Consulting work, smaller companies, less boardrooms, more human rooms. She ended with gratitude and calm, but Ethan saw her eyes. They scanned the crowd like they were searching for one person. When their eyes met, Paige barely moved her chin toward the side door near the unused offices. Ethan slipped out quietly. The side hallway was empty. A vending machine hummed. Old awards hung on the wall like ghosts. A few seconds later, the door opened. Paige stepped through and closed it behind her. For the first time since the meeting started, her shoulders dropped. She leaned back against the wall and let out a breath like she had been holding it for years. How did I do? She asked. You were incredible, Ethan said. Strong, honest. I felt like I was shaking the whole time, Paige admitted. You hid it, Ethan said gently. Paige gave a soft laugh, and then her eyes filled. So, Ethan said, voice low, it's real. You're really stepping down. I am, Paige said. The paperwork is signed. She stared at the floor for a second. In a few months, I'll just be a name on the company's history page. How do you feel? Ethan asked. Paige's laugh was quiet and shaky. Scared? She said. Relieved? Sad? Free? She swallowed. Like I jumped off a cliff, and now I'm waiting to find out if I have a parachute. They stood in the quiet, and the weight of her choice pressing around them. I didn't do this for you, Paige said quickly. I need you to know that. I know, Ethan said, and he meant it. Paige pushed off the wall and took a slow step closer. But I did it because of what being with you has shown me, she whispered. You made me see a life where I can be human. Her eyes lifted to his, raw and clear. And now, Paige said, voice trembling, in a few months, I won't be your CEO. There won't be that line between us. And if we choose each other, it will be just us. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. What if I don't want to wait months to say what I feel? He asked. Paige's lips parted. Then say it now, she whispered. Ethan took a breath that felt like it went all the way down to his feet. I'm falling for you, he said slowly, and it scares me. But it's true. Tears spilled from Paige's eyes, and she didn't wipe them away. You're not the only one, she whispered. I tried to fight it. I told myself it was wrong, that it would ruin everything. Her voice broke. It didn't matter. I kept choosing you in my thoughts, even when I told myself not to. She stepped closer until only inches sat between them. Can I hug you? Ethan asked. Just that. Paige nodded, voice barely there. Yes. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, careful at first, then steadier. Paige folded into him like she had been waiting to do it for a long time. Her face pressed to his chest, and Ethan felt her breathe out, like she finally stopped holding herself up alone. In that quiet hallway with a vending machine humming and a company changing hands behind them, they just held on. When they pulled back, Paige's eyes were still wet, but she was smiling. "I owe you a real first date," she said softly. "Not a breakdown on your couch, not a tense coffee talk. A real date." "I'd like that," Ethan said. "After I step down," Paige added. "When it's just Paige and Ethan. No titles." "Then I'll wait," Ethan said. Paige's hand found his, and their fingers laced together like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I don't want you to wait alone," Paige whispered. "We keep building this, slowly, carefully. But we don't stop." Ethan nodded. "I can live with that." The months that followed were strange and steady. New faces from Westbridge appeared. People worried less once they realized no one was being cut loose. Paige slowly stepped back from daily decisions. Ethan watched her give away pieces of the job like she was setting down a heavy load she had carried too long. Outside work, their lives moved closer. They cooked in his small kitchen. They ate dinner in her penthouse. And then Ethan showed her how to make it feel warm by turning off half the lights and putting music on low. They walked in the rain, under one umbrella, shoulders brushing, hands finding each other when no one was watching. Paige talked about her consulting plans. Ethan talked about dreams he had never said out loud because he had never thought they mattered enough to speak. "You could do freelance work," Paige said one night, sitting on his couch with takeout boxes on the table. Pick your projects. Choose your hours." "I like a steady paycheck," Ethan said. "I know," Paige said, smiling, "but steady doesn't have to mean stuck." The way she said "we" in her next sentence warmed Ethan from the inside out. Paige's last day came on a bright, clear Friday. There was a farewell gathering, speeches, a framed plaque, a photo from the first office. Paige thanked everyone, smiled for pictures, shook hands like she had done 1,000 times. Ethan stood near the back, holding a paper plate with a slice of cake, watching her say goodbye to the life she built. After people drifted away, Ethan stayed behind to help clean up. He tossed cups, wiped tables, simple work for a complicated heart. "Always helping," a voice said from the doorway. Ethan looked up. Paige stood there with her jacket off, hands in her pockets, the room empty behind her. For the first time in years, she looked like a woman at the end of a heavy chapter, not the leader of a company. "Old habit," Ethan said. Paige walked closer, her steps quiet. "So," Ethan asked, heart beating fast, "are you still my CEO?" Paige smiled. "Not as of an hour ago," she said. "As of now, I'm just Paige, an unemployed woman with a plan and a little fear." "Sounds scary," Ethan said. "It is," Paige admitted. "But I'm not scared of the right things anymore." She stopped in front of him, close enough that Ethan could feel the warmth of her. "Ethan," she said softly, "would you like to go out with me tomorrow night? As my date. Not as my employee, just as the man I'm falling for." Ethan didn't hide his smile. He couldn't. "Yes," he said. "I would." Paige's eyes shined. "One more thing," she whispered. "We said we'd take it slow, and we have." She swallowed. "But there's something I've wanted to do for months." Ethan's heart jumped. "Can I kiss you?" Paige asked. Ethan let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "No, you don't even have to ask," he said. "But I'm glad you did." Paige lifted her hands to his face, fingers gentle. Ethan rested his hands at her waist, light and careful, ready to pull back if she needed space. Paige rose on her toes and kissed him. It was soft at first, careful, like a question. Then it deepened, slow and steady, like all the waiting and fear and honesty had built one clear truth. They fit. When they pulled apart, Paige's forehead rested against his. "That," she whispered, smiling through tears, "feels like the start of something real." "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "It does." They left the building together. For the first time, Paige didn't walk ahead like a boss. Ethan didn't trail behind like an employee. They walked side by side into the cool night air, and their hands brushing, the city lights shining on wet pavement. Ethan glanced at her, and his chest filled with something he hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not safety, hope. Because that 5 a.m. knock didn't just wake him up. It cracked open a life he thought was set in place and showed him something he never expected. Someone real, someone brave enough to fall apart and still choose love. And as they stepped into the night together, and Ethan knew the quiet life he built wasn't being destroyed, it was being shared. If you believe stories still matter, go ahead and hit subscribe, Stories Beyond the Porch. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.